So this is either Halacha Gimel or Halacha He in Hilchot Yesodei Torah, Perek Peth. The Machon Mamre version it's Halacha He, the one I just marked now. Similarly, Rambam says, as we discussed in the previous Halacha, we are discussing here the authority and the purpose of a Navi, as Rambam said previously in Halacha Bet or Halacha Gimel above, over here, Rambam says, Im ken lama ne'emar b'Torah Navi aqim lahem mikarev achichem. Why does Hashem promise that there will be Nevi'im? What is the purpose of a Navi if he cannot make any fundamental change to the Torah? Lo la'asot dath huba. The Navi does not appear in order to present us with a new religion, a new system. Ela l'thawoth al divrei Torah, but rather to remind and to inform, ul'hazhir ha'am, to warn them, shelo ya'avru aleha, that they must not transgress the Torah. So said Rambam above in Halacha Gimel. And then in Halacha Daled we saw last week that we are required to follow the Navi's instructions. B'divrei ha'reshut. In Halacha Daled he said, V'chelim thiwanu b'divrei ha'reshut. In other words, something which does not pertain directly to something written in the Torah. In other words, the Torah does not tell us to go to a certain place or not to go there on a certain day. But the Navi tells us, I am telling you that you must do this thing today specifically, which in no way contradicts the Torah. We are required to listen and to obey him. Mitzvah lishmo alo, says Rambam here. And we saw at the end of this statement, which is in Halacha Daled here, at the end, Halacha, what's marked here as Gimel, V'chen Navi she'avar divrei asmo v'hakovesh nevuato. A Navi who does not follow his own instructions. But if he said, this was told to me by Hashem, but then he himself does not follow what he himself conveyed to us, Hayav mitha b'dei shamayim. A Navi who does not perform his function faithfully is Hayav mitha b'dei shamayim. He is liable to be put to death, not by Beit Din, b'dei shamayim, by the hand of heaven, literally. All right, so now in Halacha Hey. V'chen, im yomar lanu hanavi shenoda' lanu shehu navi. So if we are now speaking of a Navi, a prophet, someone that we know and that we have, he's tried and tested, he has predicted specific events in the past precisely, and they have come to pass. We know that he is a Navi. He tells us, he instructs us to transgress one of the miswot of the Torah. Or al miswot harbeh, or even several miswot in the Torah. Ben qaloth, ben hamuroth, whether these are miswot which are central to the Torah, hamuroth, serious, more serious, or qaloth, less serious. But he doesn't tell us that this is now the new normal, the new standard. We're talking here about a temporary injunction. Lefi sha'ah. Miswa lishmu'a lo. It is, we are required to obey him. וכן למדנו מהחכמים הראשונים מפי השמועה. And thus we have learned from the Hachamim Harishonim, from Hazal, from the earliest generations of the Hachamim, of the Mishneh and the Talmud, Mipi HaShemu'ah, by well-known and faithfully transmitted tradition. Literally, Shemu'ah is a tradition which is passed on by word of mouth. It's something which is heard with one's ear. Bakol, im yomar lecha navi, in whatever matter it may be, if a navi tells you, avor al divrei Torah, you must transgress the Torah at this moment in time. Ke Eliyahu bahar Carmel, as was the case with Eliyahu Navi, bahar Carmel. Shema'lo, follow him, do as he says. Husmi avodah zara, with the exception of a person who we know to be a Navi, who then tells us to worship avodah zara, some form of avodah zara. Here we are not to do so, not to obey. And this entire concept that the Navi may tell us to do things which are contrary to the Torah, this is only the case if it is a temporary measure. He's telling us to do so today, on this occasion, or for a short span of time. It was asur to bring a korban at that time. Yerushalayim had been chosen, and the Mikdash stood in Yerushalayim, and therefore the halacha was asur l'hakriv bahus, to bring a korban outside the Mikdash was asur. Waham makriv bahus hayav kareth, and he who does so is hayav kareth. But Eliyahu Navi at that time was engaged in the very most important and critical endeavor of bringing Am Yisrael back to the Torah. And he had to do so in a way that would be seen and understood and internalized by the people. So it was mutar, it was permissible for him at that time to do so as a Navi and as a Hora'ah fi sha'ah. Rambam says, and therefore, because he was a Navi, miswa lishmu'a lo, we are required to obey him. And to this too, the pasuk refers when it says, in Devarim elo tishma'un, you shall listen to that Navi. All right, in this edition of Machon Mamreina Halacha, well, وَإِلُوا شَعَلُوا Eliyahu وَأَمَرُوا لَهُ. Now, had the people at that time asked him, how can we do such a thing? Because he, after all, they were involved in what he was doing also. He told them to build an mizbeach, to build an altar, to bring wood, etc., etc. If they were to say to him, how can we follow your instruction? It says in the Torah, you may not bring a korban wherever you please. He would reply, Lo, he would say, that is true. You are quite right. He who brings a korban bahus, makriv bahus le'olam, hayav karef. Kemoshe siwa Moshe, as written in the Torah, as Moshe Rabbeinu said. Aval ani akriv hayom bahus bidvar Hashem. I do this today with Var Hashem, according to Hashem's word. Kadeh lachhish nevi'eh haba'al. I do this today in order to show to all the lies and falsehoods of Nevi'eh HaBaal, the prophets, people who claim to be prophets who were promoting the worship of the Baal in Am Yisrael at that time. Rambam continues. This is now Halakha Zayin, the Machon number edition. Wa'al haderech hazot, and according to what we have just explained, im siwa kol hanaviim, im siwu kol hanaviim la'avor lefi sha'ah. Any of the Nevi'im, if they instructed us to transgress the Torah in a particular detail, lefi sha'ah, as a temporary measure, miswa lishmu'a lahem, we are required to listen and obey. But wa'im here is not and, rather but. Wa'im, if however, amaru shahadavar ni'akar le'olam, that this miswa is no longer relevant. It is, I'm wiping it from the books. Then mithathan v'hanak. This Navi is then is transgressing. He's a Navi Shakar, he is a false prophet, and he is to be put to death by a Beth Din, Bahanak, by strangulation. Why? Because he is explicitly transgressing and contradicting the Torah, which states that the Torah is lanu ulevananu, for us and our descendants, adolam, for all time. אם עקר הדבר מדברים שלמדנו מפי השמועה, או שאמר בדין מדיני התורה שהשם ציווה לו שהדין כך הוא, והלכה כדברי פלוני, הרי זה נביא שקר. And similarly, if a Navi comes along and says, this well-established tradition of Torah Ba'al Peh is no longer relevant. This is this again. I remind you of what we discussed last time. A very clear and relevant example is the claim that it is not necessary to sleep in the sukkah, for example, where conditions permit. This is something that is nilmad min hashemua, something which is learned by clear, unequivocal shemua, that is to say, tradition that was universally accepted by the Hachamim. There was no mahloket, there was never any mahloket about this question, whether sleeping in a sukkah is a necessary part of the miswah of sukkah, miswat sukkah. It was also always understood that one must also take into account the circumstances, the weather, for example. But putting that aside, if the conditions are such that it is possible to sleep in the sukkah, and someone comes along and says, no, it's no longer the case because of this or that reason, whatever the explanation may be, this is a clear contradiction and negation of the Torah Ba'al Peh, of the Shemu'ah. When we say Mipi Shemu'ah, we refer to the essential tenets and traditions and concepts of the Torah Ba'al Peh. So if a Navi comes along and says such a thing, and this is even a Navi, Kol Sheken, how much more is this the case if the person making such a claim is not a Navi? Whether he is a professor or a Rebbe or a Rav or whoever it may be. Or she'amar bedin midinei Torah. Or this person comes along and says, regarding a certain halacha or aspect of the Torah, where there is in fact a mahaloket as to the halacha, the precise interpretation, and halacha ma'aseh, and this Navi comes along and says, well, I was told by Hashem that the halacha is according to the opinion of so-and-so. Well, halacha ki divrei peloni. According to the Rambam, such a person is a Navi Sheker. There is some mahloket regarding this point, and this requires a longer discussion. But according to Tosafot, there is room for a Navi to express a view, but not exactly as Rambam describes it here. We'll perhaps go into this another time. So if a person does any of these things, such a person is a false prophet. And is hayav mitabi the Beth Din. He is to be put to death by the Beth Din. Afal pisha asa oath, by strangulation. Hanek. Afal pisha asa oath, even though he seems to have provided some proof of the veracity of his claims. Torah, because it is plain that he is contradicting that which is stated explicitly in the Torah. Shamara lo b'shamayim hi, because the Torah states that the Torah is lo b'shamayim, it is not in heaven. Once the Torah was given to Am Yisrael, the understanding, the learning, the understanding, the interpretation of the Torah, and the deciding of the halacha is lo b'shamayim. It is not something which is in the realm of heaven. It is now ba'aretz, it is here on earth. And therefore, a Navi who says, Hashem told me that the halacha is according to such and such an opinion, this is a false and unacceptable claim. Aval lefi sha'ah, if however this is being said by the Navi, that this is what you must do for now, but not as a general rule or decision regarding this or that Torah matter, shome'im lo b'kol, we accept everything that he says. But there is an exception to what we just said, to this rule. Rambam now says, halacha he or halacha heth, the last halacha of this perek. When is this the case? B'shal miswoth. This is true of all the miswoth in the Torah, with the exception of avodah zarah. Aval. Ba'avodah zarah en shom'im lo wa'afilu lefi sha'ah. When it comes to avodah zarah, we take no heed of what he tells us. If he is instructing us to engage in anything which involves avodah zarah, en shom'im lo wa'afilu lefi sha'ah, we do not listen, and even if it is as a temporary matter. And even if this person was able to prove by way of signs and even miraculous things, ואמר שהשם ציווהו שתעבד עבודה זרה היום בלבד. And he claims that Hashem told him that today, only this day, Avodah Zarah is to be worshipped, or even just this point in time, this hour of the day. Such a person is literally defaming Hashem. He is speaking falsely of Hashem. And precisely with regards to this thing, the Torah says, even if what he predicted comes to pass, do not listen to this Navi at all, because he is speaking falsely against Hashem. Because he, in fact, is denying that which is explicitly said in the Torah, that is to say, the Nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu. And therefore we know, without doubt, that he is a false prophet. And whatever it is that he may have done before our eyes, it was about some kind of trickery, some kind of sleight of hand, or some manner of conjuring or magic, and therefore he is hayav mitah, by way of strangulation, for making such claims. We continue now on to the last parak of Hilchot Yesodei Torah, parak Asiri, halacha aleph. Kol navi she'yamod lanu v'yomar she'Hashem shelacho. A navi who comes and states, Hashem sent me to tell you this, such and such. אינו צריך לעשות עוד כאחד מאותות משה רבנו, או מאותות אליהו ואלישע. A Navi is not, by definition, a miracle worker. He does not have to prove his ability to perform supernatural, miraculous events, as was the case with Moshe in Mitzrayim, or with Eliyahu Bahar Carmel, as we saw, or with Elisha, the Talmid of Eliyahu Navi, who also performed some miraculous events. Sheyesh bahem shinui minhago shel olam. In these particular cases, there was in fact there were miracles that do not follow the normal course of events and realities in the natural world. So when we speak about a Navi having to prove himself, he does not have to perform miracles. He does not have to cause a fire to ignite miraculously when there is no reason why there should be a fire there, nor does he have to levitate in the air or anything of the sort. The oath that he needs to provide for us so that we can begin to have confidence in this person that he is a Navi. Ha'oth shelo sheyomar. Excuse me. El ha'oth shelo sheyomar devarim ha'atidim liot ba'olam. The proof is the foretelling of events that are going to occur in this world. وَيَأْمَنُوا دَفَرَوْا. Ye'amanu doesn't mean they will be believed. It means that they come to pass. In other words, we see them to be so. The word ye'amanu, like the word amen, means it is so. It is an affirmation. And we see that his predictions, which are precise and can be verified, come to pass. states over there in the Torah. Let us read the pasuk briefly. In Sefer Devarim, Perek Yod Het, the last two pasukim here. V'chit thomar v'levavecha. And if you shall say in your heart, you will say to yourself, how will we know if the Navi is leading us astray, if he claims things in the name of Hashem that were not said to him? The Torah says, that which the Navi claims to be in the name of Hashem, and this thing, however, does not take place, does not come to pass. That is clearly something that Hashem did not state, did not say to this Navi, and therefore you know that he is a false prophet. It is a willful lie on his part. You shall not fear him. In other words, you shall deal with him according to the Torah, and you shall not fear him. So, Rambam says here now in this edition here of Machon Mamre Halachabeth, therefore, כשיבוא אדם הראוי לנבואה במלאכות Hashem, when the right kind of person, as we discussed previously in Perek Zayin, we'll look at that again in a moment. ולא יבוא להוסיף ולא לגרוע, and this person does not suggest that we add to or detract from the Torah. אלא לעבוד את השם במצוות התורה, rather his efforts are directed towards leading Am Yisrael to come closer to Hashem and to live according to the Torah. אין אומרים לו, we do not say to such a person, assuming that he has proved himself in the past and he is of the right sort of person. Cannot just be anybody, as we discussed. We do not say to such a person, well, we need proof, so split the sea for us. Or hayemeth, or revive this dead person. Or such things. And then, having done so, we will believe you. We will trust you. This is not so. What we say is, if you are a Navi, as you claim, foretell, predict future events. And he makes such a prediction. Again, something clear, unequivocal, unambiguous. And we wait and see, we test what he has said to us to see if it comes to pass. But if it does not, even if it is much of what he said came to pass, but one or two details did not transpire, such a person is a Navi Sheker, and there is no question about this, because any such prediction by such a Navi will come true in its entirety. However, if all his predictions come to pass, then such a person in our eyes is trustworthy, and we believe what he says. And he is to be tested several times, many times. And we see time and again that what he says is going to happen does in fact take place. Such a person is a Navi Emath, a true prophet. As it says with regards to Shemuel, وَيَدَعْ كُلُّ إِسْرَائِيل مِدَانْ وَعَدْ بَئْرِ شَبَعْ كِي نَأْمَنْ شِمُوئೇל لَنَبِي لَدُنَّي. People knew that what Shemuel predicted and what he said was always true and precise. And therefore they knew that he was a Navi Hashem. Rambam adds now, this is now halacha daled or halacha gimel, wahalo, hamu'onanim wahakosamim. The mu'onanim refers to astrologers. Kosmim are literally magicians, or those who claim to have such powers. Hamu'onanim wahakosamim. Omerim me'atid liyot. You may say, just a moment, there are other types of people who are not Nevi'im, who are also able to predict future events. What therefore is the difference between the Navi, the true Navi, and these kinds of people? And such people, with such people, if you examine carefully what they say, what they claim, some of what they say may come true. And others do not come to pass. As it says in Yeshayahu, let the astrologers and those who make all kinds of predictions based on what they see in the sky, let them save you. Those who predict what will occur in the future. The pasuk there states, Me'asher v'lo kol asher. Hazal learned from this pasuk, or medayek from this word me'asher. The oath mem, the letter mem at the beginning of a word, very frequently is lashon mi'ut. It comes to limit the purview and the meaning of that word. This is even true in the Mishneh, at least on some occasions. The Gemara in one or two places on the Mishneh is medayek from the lashon of the Mishneh, such a thing. That because it said me such and such, it is not 100% inclusive. Here too, we know that there are all kinds of people who make all kinds of predictions. Sometimes it's based on some knowledge that they have of certain events that are not widely known to all. Other times it is based on an intuition. They may be very clever people. So Rambam discusses in Sefer Miswoth and also in Moreh Nevuchim, speaking about such people who are able, occasionally, even frequently, to state that which will be, but they cannot always be correct. It is also possible that nothing of what they claim will come to pass. And in fact, they will be shown to be completely wrong. As it states in the pasuk, Mefer ototh badim v'kosamim yeholel. In other words, that Hashem can change the course of events so that what they claim does not come to pass. And this is something that can be seen not infrequently. Halacha Hey in this edition. Aval HaNavi, Kol Devaro Kayamim, as opposed to a Navi. In other words, the Navi is not like these astrologers and wise men or magicians or what have you who make predictions, not all of which come true. Aval HaNavi, Kol Devaro Kayamim, everything he states comes to pass. Shenemar ki lo yipol midavar Adonai arsan. Not a single word of Hashem's that comes truly from Hashem. Not a single word, not a single thing will prove not to be so. V'chen hu omer hanavi asher ito halom yisaper halom wa asher devari ito yidaber devari emet. Malat heaven et habar no'um Adonai. Pasuk, famous pasuk in Yirmiyahu, where Hashem says to Yirmiyahu, a Navi, a person known to be some kind of a special person, a mystic, an unusual, unique individual. He may see things in a dream. He may believe this is what it's going to be, but sometimes it was just a dream. It was wishful thinking. But it doesn't always pan out that way. But things that I convey to a Navi, asher devari ito, a person who has my word, my information that I convey to him in his mouth, literally, yadaber devari emet, he will speak my truth precisely. Kolomar shedivrei hakosamim wa halomot ketheven shnitarev bo ma'atbar. The words of the sorcerers and mystics and soothsayers, astrologers, are ketheven. Teven is straw. In other words, it comes from the stalk of the wheat, on the seeds of which we eat, not the straw. Ketheven shenit arev or ma'at bar. Bar is the grain itself. So you may also have sometimes some seeds of wheat mixed up with the straw because they fell when it was harvested. But essentially, it's teven. It is not the real McCoy. It is not reliable truth. Sometimes certain things may be as they claim, and other times not. However, udvar Hashem. However, the word of Hashem, kavar, is like the grain, she'en bo teven kolab, is like the grains of wheat that have been removed and separated from the stalk, from the hull, from the shell, and from all the other parts of the wheat plant, and what it remains is just the grains of wheat which sustain us. Briefly, I want to go back to Perek Zayin. Just to refresh our memory, what Rambam wrote here at the beginning of Perek Zayin, Yesodei Hadath is one of the essentials, fundamental principles and beliefs of the Torah. Leda Sha'el Menabe et Bnei Ha'adam, that Hashem does imbue people, human beings, with special spirit and information and understanding. Menabeth b'nei adam. Well, this is a reality. This is true. We'en hanevuah, but again, the waw here, we'en, is not and, it's but. However, we'en hanevuah hala ela al chacham gadol b'chokhmah. Yes, there is such a thing, but it doesn't occur to every Tom, Dick, and Harry. Not to every person with a long beard and a very impressive hat. Not to every such person can one attribute such powers. This person has to be known, familiar to us, as someone who is very knowledgeable and wise. Gadol b'chokhmah, in simple terms, means that he's a gadol b'chokhmah HaTorah. Gibor b'midotav, someone who is also in complete control of his passions. Someone who is in control of his desires and his behavior is always in line with the Torah. A person of great and profound understanding. So the person in question that we are discussing, anytime we discuss nevuah, we have to first ask ourselves: is that person such a person? We have reason to believe that this is such a person. That's what Rambam said here in Perek Asiri, we read a few moments ago, in Halacha Beth, the beginning. Lefichach, k'sheyavo adam hara'ui lanevuah. He has to be ra'ui lanevuah. This has to be kept in mind. Again, this is not something you can know or infer from the way a person dresses, no matter whatever particular clothing or costume or get-up this person adopts. That is no proof of anything at all. And here, I think I will mention to you a true story. A young man, many, many years ago, he got married, and I used to learn with this person on a fairly regular basis. And after they were married for about 1 year, he came to me and he said, we're concerned, particularly my wife is very concerned because she's not becoming pregnant. They've been married for about 1 year. I responded to him and said, based on what I know, that 1 year is not quite enough to be certain there is a problem. There might be a problem, and there might not be. So I said to him, what I think you do need to do is to do two things. I think you need to go speak to a reliable gynecologist, you and your wife. And another reason I'm saying this, to ascertain that there is in fact no problem as far as a doctor can tell, and B, because sometimes it is the very fact that the woman is tense and very concerned and constantly pondering this matter and convinces herself that there is a problem, sometimes it is that itself that causes the problem. This is what I said to him. And I suppose he went and said this to his wife as well. But she was not happy with that. She was not convinced by that information or by what I suggested. And it also happened that this young man's father had some connection to a particular, what is known here in Israel as Had Hababot, one of the Babot, a Baba, like a Baba Sali, a Baba this, a Baba that. He had some connection to one of these people in the south of the country, someplace. And the father believed this person, and he said, "We'll go to him, and we'll get a bracha from him, and we'll see what he says." They did so. I'm quite certain, because I know how these things work, that some money also passed hands, and they went to this person, and he probably had a bottle of holy water on the table or something, and I know who we're talking about, and these people also know how to dress up in an appropriate manner, which is calculated to be impressive and instill confidence in what they say. Anyway, so he said to this couple, "Ani omer lachem, toch shana yeh lachem ben zachar." I'm telling you that within a year you will have a male child. And so it was. A year later they had a child. It just happened to have been a girl. And in my view, again, I'm fairly convinced that this woman did not have any problem, but she was so uptight and could not relax, etc., that this was the problem. Once she heard this and she believed what this person said, this removed that particular problem, that difficulty, and the rest happened as it should happen. Clearly, this person was not a Navi, not a Navi Hashem. I think such people are some form of Chosem or Me'onen, some form of sorcerer or supposed miracle worker. I know of this case myself. I knew this person well, and I remember when their first child was born, and it was a girl. So I know this story to be true from beginning to end. And this should be a lesson for all of us. Rambam continues. Halacha, well, ובדבר הזה, and with regards to this, הכתוב הבטיח ואמר, the Torah states and promises, ואמר, שאותן הדברים שמודיעים המעוננים והקוסמים לאומות ומכזבים, with regards to the various things said by such people, by astrologers, sorcerers, what have you, fortune tellers, the things that they claim and they say to their own people. There are many such people, of course, in the world, not just Jews. In fact, most such people are not Jewish. It is, in fact, the other way around, that the Jews sometimes, unfortunately, learn from in the surrounding culture to believe and trust in such things and engage in such practices. And their predictions and their claims turn out not to be true. Hanavi yodia lachem divrei ha'emet. In other words, that which is true for the other nations, that they rely on these types of people and trust them. This is not the way of the Jewish people. This is not what Hashem has predicted, and this is not the reality in which the Jewish people are to live. A true prophet will tell you the truth. And you have no need of such people. The pasuk states over there that the same parasha we saw before, you shall not engage in any of these practices of the other nations, which are always involve sorcery, and is also related, of course, always to Avodah Zarah, and the claim that they have special powers based on their connection to this god or that spirit or what have you, and all kinds of occasionally horrific practices are involved. This is the pasuk that we saw before. Let us look again briefly at that pasuk. Devarim Perek Yod Het. It says here in pasuk Teth, Ki ata ba al haaretz, when you enter Eretz Yisrael, Asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach, lo tilmad la'asot keta'avot hagoyim ha'hem. You are not to learn from and emulate the practices and the horrific and disgusting practices of the nations there. Lo yimasevecha ma'avir bano uvito ba'esh. You shall not sacrifice your children to the and hand them over to these priests, these criminal priests who throw the child into the fire, as was done with various forms of worship in this part of the world at that time. Qasem qasamim, or any kind of sorcerer, ma'onen or menahesh or mechashef, any kind of miracle worker. Wahaver haver or shoel ob yud'oni. This refers to various types of sorcery, necromancy, etc. V'doresh alamethim. Ki thu'avat Adonai kol ose ele, u'vighlal ha'tu'avot ha'ele, Adonai Elohecha morish otham mipanecha. All these things are hateful in the eyes of Hashem. Rather, tamim tihya im Adonai Elohecha. You must be whole and complete in your faith in Hashem, and not look for any kind of substitute. Ki hagoyim ha'ele asher ata yoresh otham, those goyim that you are about to inherit, el ma'olanim wa el kosamim yishma'u, they follow such people and their claims and their practices. Wa ata lo chen, but you are not to do so. Nathan lecha Adonai Elohecha, this is not what Hashem has laid out for you. Rather, Navi mi'chidbecha me'ahecha kamoni yakim lecha Adonai Elohecha elo tishma'un. Rather, I shall appoint a Navi who will, like myself, says Moshe Rabbeinu, elo tishma'un, and to such a person, and only to such people are we to obey, are we to believe and to follow. We shall stop here for today. Hayu beruchim, hizku v'yames levavchem. Kol ha'meyahalim l'Adonai. Shalom, shalom.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.